Hey everybody, Bobby Medina here with my good buddy Paul Barron, and today we are bringing you our dear friend Dan Falcone, who is a Las Vegas trumpet ace. He's played with everybody in the business for decades. We've had him on a couple times, but he's got such a glorious career. We thought it would be interesting to talk about a few of the more recent gigs he's been doing, which have been very cool. So, Paul, let's get this started.
I sure will. Okay, so tell us about how you got into these like really major productions, shows like with Lady Gaga, Celine Dion, Jersey Boys, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Obviously, there was a starting launching point from there. Tell us
yeah.
about that.
Well, I guess it goes back to when I was in high school. The town was ripe for musicians, so there was plenty of work. Even a kid could work on the strip. So I would go play shows after high school. I mean, and that's how I got started and got to know the guys, and slowly built my reputation with them and got hired for more shows. And so that all started rolling. And then I went to college and at USC for a while and toured with a couple of bands. Came back to Vegas and I was in a lounge band because at that time everybody had gone on strike. Right, the musicians were on strike because all the hotels were going to taped music.
Right.
So the only real live music were in the lounges, and I got very fortunate to hook up with this really killer band, which is kind of a mini version of Santa Fe and the Fat City Horns. It was Diane Diaz and the Big Fish, it was called, and a lot of the guys from, all the really great musicians in town kind of cycled through that band because the material was really cool. I mean, much like what we do. And I was fortunate enough to get to be a part of it. And I got discovered by the Tom Jones group. They would come out and see us all the time. And eventually I got hired to go on tour with Tom from him hearing me with that gig.
Wow. Now, would Tom
So,
sit in with the band? Because I heard that he does from time to time, or
yeah,
did.
no, he didn't come out. It was his musical director, Brian Monroney, who came out and saw the band a bunch. And
Cool.
eventually, Dan Miller, phenomenal trumpet player, was playing lead trumpet with actually it was only one trumpet at the time, with Tom, and he threw his back out picking up a monitor, and so they called me and said, "Hey, do you want to come in and sub for him?" So I did, and then Dan decided not to come back, and I just ended up falling into the gig. So that's how that all started, and then once I got on that band, then everything kind of just kept rolling from there.
So, how old were you then when you first got on with Tom Jones? Like
I, I
22 or
was
something?
no, I was older. I was 28
Oh,
when I
okay.
started on that job. Yeah. Yeah. So I was in Vegas doing all kinds of different shows and productions and eventually that fell, I mean, like I said, it kind of fell in my lap, thank God. So that was,
That's pretty cool because I know Brian out here. I've worked with him a
oh,
couple
really?
times. And was Darrell Holden on the gig when you
Yeah,
were on there?
yeah,
Because
yeah.
she works with me from time to time on
Oh,
some
I
different
love her.
projects I got. Yeah.
Yeah, she was on.
So I've been told, from a number of people that I know that have cycled through Tom Jones's band that that's a brutal gig
Yeah.
as far as chops. And I know a lot of people have had some issues, just because it's such a grind. Now, have you had any kind of things like that going on? Was it a
Yeah.
tough gig for you?
Yeah. At that time, I mean, well, I guess we can get into gear at some point, but at that time when I went out, I was playing a Bobby Shoe Yamaha with a Marcinkowitz, 125 shoe, because in Vegas, I had to play like Earth, Wind and Fire and all of that kind of stuff in a lounge, pointing out to the pit, and they don't want to hear anything, So when I was playing my old stuff, trying to get like a Gazo sound, that was just no way. So I started working on bringing my sound in, but still being able to, play efficiently and play the high notes and all the stuff that was needed, but not, you know, carry through so much. So
Mm-hmm.
when I got on Tom's band, that horn worked well for a little while, but I was the only trumpet for 6 or 8 months, and it was that horn started to limit for me playing. I know there are other guys who can play it, and it's magical for them, but for me, once I got to around an A flat, that horn started to feel tight, for me. Um, and so what happened was when Pete Olstad came on the band, we added another trumpet, so we made the section bigger. I wanted to, try to match better. He was playing an old recording, so I switched to that just so we could blend better and all that. And that began a downhill spiral for me.
Man.
It's a big change, you know what I mean? And so by the time I got off Tom's band, man, I couldn't play. I mean, I was at the point where I thought I was done. I really got myself into a pickle, you know? And so it took me about 8 months of working with, you know, who helped me was Patrick Hessian, believe it or not. We heard Pat playing at Ball State, and I never heard anything like that in my life. I mean, the guy was just, it was ridiculous. So we got him out to Vegas, right? And then eventually on to Maynard's band. But Pat had a really unconventional way of warming up and working his chops. And anyway, he really helped me, man. It took about 8 months of starting over from scratch and and having to kind of relearn what to do. But by the time that 8 months came out, I had put a fifth on my range and gotten everything kind of back together again, you know. So yeah, it was scary. It was
so for that, when we talk a lot. I mean, I see a lot of people in our group here, and we talk about, there's a lot of questions about gear. There's a lot of questions about things, but you just hit something right on the head. And this is so true. And people, you have to figure it out what works for you. Not what works for Bobby Shue or Dan Falcone or me or Paul Barron or whatever, because it's just like, one person, he wears the size 8D and another person wears a 12A or whatever shoe, and so we got to find our own way. But so getting into this spiral, was it the amount of work, not only the demands of it, endurance and range and stuff like that on a show like this, but I'm assuming it just kind of night after night after night, having to just continually produce. Was that kind of what helped?
At that time, yeah, when I went out on the road, I was 28, but I didn't really have it all together. Certainly, I mean, not that I do, not that, I do, but certainly have it more together now than I did. And, I did really well for a while. I was able to, I did a good job for a couple of 3-4 months or whatever it was, 5 months, whatever, 8 months, I think I was on the ground. But then once I started messing around with gear, I changed my mouthpiece, I changed my horn to try to blend better. I was trying to be conscientious, rather than just sticking to my guns and doing what I should have done. And I think what happened was, it wasn't so much let me backtrack. So I was relatively consistent even in my 20s, but I never felt consistent. Like every night in my head, I thought, oh my God, is this going to come out? The first that lick up to an E doesn't seem like much, but man, when you're on the spot and that's like the first thing you got to play, for every trumpet player I've ever talked to who's done that band, that's terror, playing that lick. So, I think the head trip started to happen a little bit. Then switching equipment started to happen. And the fact that I didn't have a consistent warm up, I didn't have a routine that I did to help me know what I needed to feel like. Every day was different. I would pick up the horn, I would try something, hope to feel good. Some days it would feel absolutely horrible. Other days it was effortless. There was no consistency. And so that is what I think threw me after I switched horns. It really started to spiral out of control for me. I was okay. I mean, I could play the gig, but sometimes I'd get hurt. Sometimes it, wouldn't sound right. But, I knew enough how to get through it, but I didn't like what was happening. And by the end of it, between the head trip of it all and everything else, I was in bad shape, So it was actually a good time to come off the band and kind of start over again in a sense, So
did you have to take some time off before you started your, let's say, rehabilitation process?
No, not really. No, I mean, I got right into it. I luckily, like I said, Pat was in town and he was at UNLV still. No, I think we were done. Yeah, we were long done, but he was still here. Maybe he was already on Maynard's band, but he was living here. And so when he came over one day, we were playing, and I just said, "Dude, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm done." And Pat had this really wild thing, man. He would warm up, and for whatever, when he would practice and warm up, the first 30 minutes, he sounded like he was a sixth grader. I mean, it was so bad, like so bad. I would just look at him like, "What the hell are you doing?" It was awful. And then honest to God, there'd be this switch that would happen that fast. It would go from just horrible to, oh my God, you know? And so I just said to him, what are you doing? How are you getting that to work? You know? And so he showed me his routine, and, you know, he kept encouraging me, don't quit, just keep doing it, no matter how bad it sounds, do this, do this. And I did. And it took maybe a month before I could actually start getting it to work right. And then once it started, I could see the progress really starting to go like this, you know? So it kept me motivated to keep doing it. And then once I kind of understood what we were doing and getting the center back and all of that, then I kind of took from all the teachers I'd studied with over the years and started piecing together what worked for me. Because like you said, not everything works. I studied with everybody I could in LA, you know, Charlie Davis, yeah, Gary Grant, all those guys. And, you know, some of the things worked for me. Some I was just like befuddled, like, I don't know what's going on. This doesn't work, you know? And it's just every mouth is different, you know? So.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you say that, just backing up to Patrick about how he sounded at the beginning of his warm-up and then later on, because Jimmy Stamp told me an amazing story, very, very similar to that, except for it was about Rafael Mendez. And he told me, he used to call him Ralph. I guess they were good friends. And he'd say, yeah, you know, when Ralph warms up, you know, he just sounds, he said the same thing. He said, he sounds like he's in elementary school.
Really?
You know, he can barely get, you know, it's a long tone to start and it's shaky and it's wobbly and then it takes a little while. And then, you know, 15 minutes later or whatever, wow, there's the guy we know, you know?
Right.
So, I mean, everybody's different. Not everybody sounds like amazing every day when they pick it up. We're all human. It's metal versus flesh. So we have days when it just feels like, you know, bad. I won't say it, but it feels bad.
Yeah, friends, the same thing about George Graham. Apparently they went to see Bob Florence's band one time, and down the side of the band towards the back, you know, sort of behind the band a little bit, they saw this big guy kind of warming up, and he sounded like, you know, an 8th grader or something, and they actually thought about asking for their cover charge back and leaving because they thought, oh, this is going to be a terrible band. If that's what the guy, you know, it sounds like now, what's it going to sound like on the bandstand? And then all of a sudden, you know, they see the same guy up there and, oh man, he can really play.
Yeah. So Danny, I know I've been to Vegas and I'm trying to think of the resort it was. I was there actually on a business trip, and I think it was called the Green Valley Ranch. Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
And Santa Fe and the Fat City Horns, I think, were playing there. Was that it? Maybe I'm totally wrong, or maybe that was the trip I was on, and I went into town and I saw you guys playing somewhere else.
I think we've done one gig there, but normally we were at the Palms forever. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, maybe that's where it was. But I know I just know I've seen this band. And for those of you that have never heard of Santa Fe and the Fat City Horns, you should check them out online. And certainly, if you're ever in Vegas, this is like, and you're a trumpet player or you just like good music, and we're talking like probably the greatest cover band of all times. Not that you only play cover music, of course, but I mean, if you want to hear, you know, some Tower Power and some, you know, Earth, Wind and Fire and stuff like that done at the highest level, this is the band. It's super fun, super musical, and really impressive. But tell us a little bit about that and how that was kind of an on-ramp into some of the other things you've done.
Well, that is the on-ramp, to be honest. So anyway, when I left, we'll pick up from Tom Jones because it all adds together. So I was home. My grandfather was dying, and I didn't want to leave him because I was super close with my grandfather. So the band was going to London. I said, I can't go, and I just can't do it. I have to stay home with my grandfather. So they left. They put another trumpet player on the band. During that time, Jerry Lopez, who's the leader of Santa Fe and the Fat City Horns, started calling me and saying, hey, listen, he was out with Ricky Martin. He was his musical director for a while. He said, Ricky's production team is putting a show together, big, huge production show, and I want you to play trumpet on it. And I just, I said, well, I'm with Tom Jones. I can't do it, and he would not leave me alone about it. And eventually we came to terms and I took the gig. And that band was, I mean, ridiculous. I mean, ridiculous. I can't even tell you how great that was. It's called Storm. The show wasn't that great, but the band was ridiculous. And we had like Larry Williams come in and help us with the arranging, and it's stupid. So that band was mostly made up of guys from Santa Fe. I wasn't in the band at that time. This was in like 2000, 2001. And anyway, I used to go see them and just be in awe. I mean, it was the baddest band I've ever heard. And to this day, it's still the best band I've ever heard in my life. And man, I set my sights. I really wanted to be in the band, you know? So eventually they played my wedding. I got the band to play at Green Valley Ranch, of all places. And I sat in with them and played. And eventually one of the trumpet players left. And so Jerry asked me to join the band. That band has been the kind of the showcase for every gig I've gotten, I think, just about since that time. So, you know, I remember Bette Midler was doing a show, 2 years of show at Caesars. She came in, saw the band, hired the whole horn section immediately. You know, we got that job. We did that. Then we were playing, and someone told Celine Dion's musical director about us because they were getting ready to mount a new show, and they wanted to use horns. And they were actually considering the Canadian brass, if you can believe it. But this show was going to be high energy and more, you know, rock stuff and all that. I know it's hard to believe it's Celine, but it's true. So after many, many times of promising to come out in this, that he came and he brought Celine's husband. And after the show, he came up to me, Renee, and he kissed me on the cheek and he said, "Marvelous." He said, "I would like for you to be in our show." He said, "Would you like to do that?" I said, "Absolutely." You know?
Yeah, let me think about it for a second. No.
Yeah, right. I know. I couldn't believe it, man. So that's how that came about. And then they called me and I said, "Listen, you've got to hire. The only way I'll do it is if you hire my trombone player to write the arrangements, because he's the best. I'd want him on the band." So the two of us got hired, and then we did auditions. They brought in people from all over the country, and to our great fortune, of the six of us, five of us were hired. Or no, four of us. I'm sorry, four of us were hired on Celine's group. There were 5 horns in total, and then we auditioned and finally ended up with. I found Matt Franke, and he joined the band too. So that's how that all came about. And then the same thing happened with Lady Gaga. So they were doing auditions here in town. Brian Newman. They had just about every musician in town was set up to do an audition. I hate auditioning. So I set myself to be the very last person to audition because I wanted as much time as I could to try to, you know, chill out because I just hate auditions. I was on vacation. I got a call from somebody. And so I canceled my vacation and came home. So my audition was Tuesday night. The Monday night before Brian came to see the band, we got done playing. He came up to us. He put his arms around us. He said to me, "Don't bother coming in tomorrow. You're my lead trumpet player." So nice. I thought, thank God, because I hate auditions. Yeah.
Well, I was just thinking, what's an audition like that for a pop band like if you go in? I have no idea, because anytime I've auditioned with a band playing a chair or a solo part or whatever.
Yeah,
so do you even know how that even works? I mean, how would you?
I heard that guys just played through some of the charts. You know, he just had some of the charts from the Tony Bennett record she did. You know, played through some of that and played a couple of solos and such. But yeah, we were fortunate. He said, you know, all 6 of you, you're in. So that was that. You know, so we got to avoid the.
Yeah, and that just makes it better for them too, because they get this cohesive section that's been together, that understands how to play and blend and all phrase and all that stuff. So that's cool.
Yeah, cool.
So getting on a gig, like let's start with the Celine Dion thing. What's that like on a ramping up for it, rehearsing wise, and then just the gig itself? How many nights a week was it? How many shows each day was it? And how difficult of a show is that just physically?
Okay, so ramping up for it, we had rehearsals. We went to Florida to rehearse where she lived. And it was, you know, I mean, that's a that's a whole nother magnitude. You know, Celine Dion's like one of the biggest stars in the world, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I went from being with Tom Jones. I mean, he is too, don't get me wrong. But when you get to a Celine thing, man, I was, you know, I didn't know what to expect because I'd not been a fan. I never listened to her music. That wasn't
Mm.
my thing, you know. And I was thinking, oh, this is kind of going to be just another thing. But because we got Nathan writing the arrangements, they were really challenging and really fun. And she did a lot of pop stuff and wasn't just the ballads that she's famous for. You know, we did a lot of rock and roll. Like her favorite stuff is AC/DC. You
Oh,
know,
really?
yeah. So like, I mean, we didn't do that, but we did like Queen tunes. We did a lot of stuff, and it was really, really challenging because we had to wear in-ears. We were all over the stage. We weren't just in one place. We were integral into the production itself, you know. So I had to learn how to play like that because I wasn't used to having in-ears. I was used to monitors, you know, and I was really worried about that. So I had to figure that all out. And then we played 4 shows a week, and we would rehearse, you know, we would get in at, let's say, 5 o'clock. We would rehearse basically the whole show. We played through the whole show, have a break, and then do the show. So that was every night that we worked. So yeah, you had to be in really good shape because you can't miss on that show. You know, it's not like a big band where you can chip something and, you know, it's okay. I mean, there's only 5 horns, and it's very exposed, you know, very exposed. So I had to really like, that's where this routine that I do for myself came into being so important, because that would provide me a feeling that I knew, like after I got done with that, I knew, okay, yeah, I'm good. I'm going to be okay. You know, I know now as I've gotten older, I've understood what I need to feel in my chops and my breath to feel like, okay, I can be consistent tonight. I'm okay. You know, there's no more of that. And I mean, there's always panic because it's trumpet, you know, but there's no more of the panic of, oh my God, it's not working. You know, I know how to get it to work now. You know,
So here's a question for you.
Serious.
Do you alter it then? Okay, so you were with Celine when you started solidifying all of this kind of stuff. And then with Gaga, is it the same? Like, are you now
Yeah.
at a home base where you always do that same thing to get feeling good?
Yeah, I am. You know, and part of me, I don't like it because you become a slave to it. You know, there are guys like that can just pick up their horn and in 15 seconds they're ready to go. You know, I can't do that. If I got called, I mean, I probably could get by, but if I got called for something, they said, "Hey, be here in 20 minutes," and I haven't touched my horn, that would be tough. You know, I can do it, but it would not feel good, and it would be, I might have some problems. I'm really kind of locked into having to do a certain, you know, pattern of things to get everything to feel right. Once I'm there, then I'm cool. Like I feel like for Santa Fe, you know, well, actually for Gaga, there's a lot of really high double D's and all that kind of stuff all over the show, and exposed like tonguing, bam, you know, it's got to be there. That's scary as hell, you know. And so this warm up, when I'm done with it, I know, okay, yeah, I can do that. I feel okay to do that, you know. If I don't do that, then I feel like I could split something or miss, you know. So it's kind of I'm locked into it. It's kind of a burden, you know, to have to do it. But then it also provides me the safety net to know I'm okay. I'm going to be able to get through whatever's coming at me, you know.
Sure, it's whatever it takes to get to that confidence point and to know that you're able to do it. Yeah,
Yeah.
And I'm the same way. Just yes, sure, I could do it for 1 or 2 days in a row. Like the surprise, oh, got to play now, and you don't get to it. But I don't know about for you, but for me, it catches up to me.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think a big part of it's understanding what your needs are and knowing how to get back to home base. You know, some people we see in our groups, they've just been on this downward spiral, or they've never figured it out, or they're on this big roller coaster ride of inconsistency.
Yes.
And I think all of us at some point in our past have dealt with that to some degree. And I see people that have been physically damaged and they have never been able to recover or feel like they've been able to recover.
Yeah.
And I guess a lot of it, you've alluded to something here that I think is one of the most important aspects of playing. And it's kind of what goes on in our head, because if you tell yourself you cannot do something,
you're done. Yeah.
You're not going to be able to do it. If you tell yourself you can,
Yeah.
at least you got a better chance. You know, there's a saying that I love. It says, whether you think you can or you can't, you will. And it seems to be really true, you know, but there are a lot of things in it's really important just to know how to get back to this home base. But what I was going to say is, many years ago, Jimmy Stamp, he used to call me his wounded soldier when I was taking lessons from him, because I'd be out playing these jazz gigs or these polka gigs or big band things or whatever all weekends. And I would come in on Monday mornings for my lesson, and I would just be all beat up, and I felt like I had 2 boxing gloves on my face, you know?
Yeah, sure.
And man, it was just crazy. It was like, literally within maybe 5 to 10 minutes, he'd have me go from my absolute worst feel to my absolute best feel. He was just really a master of it. But he always told me, and there was a couple times when I hurt myself pretty bad, and he told me, remember that no matter how bad it gets, you can always return back. You can always get it back. Yeah. And I think sometimes people lose hope and get really overly worried, maybe like you were feeling when you had this Tom Jones thing. Oh man, is this the end, you know?
Yeah.
But I think there's always a way to rehabilitate yourself.
There definitely is, man. And I know a lot of guys that have even, you know, just moved the mouthpiece a little. Like, I have a terrible scar. So when I was younger, I used to puff my cheeks and, you know, pressure. I would cut all the time. And then I got on this all-American college band, the Disney. So I had a whole 2 summers where I played at Disney with this college band. And the night before we opened, I cut my chops right there, right? So I played an entire summer with a cut lip, the entire summer. So I would, like, on breaks, I'd be bleeding. I'd go in and get salt and cauterize it, you know, and then have to go back and play. And I was playing lead trumpet, and it's brutal. You're outdoors, you're playing 7 sets a day. And so I really damaged, an entire summer on a cut, if you can imagine what that does. So I have a thin spot right there that is almost like, it feels like there's no flesh underneath it. There's no meat. So I have to be super careful when I play. That's why I started making my own mouthpieces. Part of it was to figure out a rim that didn't hurt me, you know, even when I was exhausted. And now I have to be very careful that I don't, if I thin that out and that mouthpiece goes, boy, that'll split in a second. And if that happens, I'm afraid I could actually damage there's ways out. Like, I didn't think I'd come out of that either, but you figure out where to put them out. You know, you have to change a little and this and that. It's possible to do all of it, you know.
Balance is important.
I think another point too is a lot of people, rather than trying to figure out this, go directly to, oh, I guess I need to have, I'm going to just say this as a joke, really, but, you know, heavy caps, that'll fix, you know, right. Or this mouthpiece because that worked for Maynard, or this one, Warren, because Bud Hurst sounds great on it, but,
right.
You know, whatever. They're always searching for the you know, the silver bullet or the magic bullet or whatever, but rather than spending time learning about their body.
For sure. I do think that equipment plays a role. There's no doubt about it, you know. However, I think if this isn't together, doesn't matter what equipment you get, you know, the equipment will make what you do more efficient. It'll make it maybe easier to do, or provide you, you know, a little more comfort in what you're doing. But ultimately, it doesn't matter. That's not going to make or break it. You know, what's going to make or break it is figuring it out for yourself. And that's tough, man, because, you know, you have to figure it out. It took me forever. I mean, geez, I was really in my 30s before I thought, and I, you know, still don't have it figured out. You know, none of us do, I don't think. But I think when I got really where I was at the point that I could be consistent and produce night after night after night, that wasn't until I was in my 30s, you know, and it's gotten better throughout the years. I feel like I'm, you know, you keep learning as long as you're looking for it. You know, there's stuff you can always learn, and then you optimize. Like, I'm an equipment geek. You know, I've got more than 60 trumpets and hundreds and hundreds of mouthpieces. I make my own now. You know, I'm all for finding, even if it's a little, make it a little better, but not depending on that. You know what I mean? Like you said, it's not that. You're not gonna pick up a horn and all of a sudden everything works. It just doesn't work that way.
No, it's not.
Unfortunately, I wish it did.
Yeah, me too. I've
But
tried.
it's nice to, people that are smart, I think, in any field. I mean, you, like Paul and I often talk about the sports field. Those guys have. I was watching the Olympics and they were talking about the bobsled, whatever the monobob.
Yeah, right.
So they got this race and they're talking about the teams that are going to lose, and they already know who these teams are that are going to lose, because they don't have the money to put into the technology of the sleds like some of the wealthier countries do.
Right.
And, and so, and in there, we're talking about fractions of a second or a couple of seconds, and so people, I think, that are smart and that do what they do well, they're always looking for that extra little edge, just to get a little better, just to improve yourself somewhat. Yeah. And we go through that through life. I mean, life is about growing. It's like you don't get to one point and then you're sort of done. I remember I heard, I think I heard it was Malcolm McNabb that just like, he says, like, I play better now than I've ever played in my life, and he's great. And he was great back when he was young, So
the other thing is we get the curse of aging. I mean, I'd heard this growing up, all my teachers and everything. Oh, every decade something's going to change, and then you're going to have to alter. And whatever, But it's true, man. It's like every 10 years or so, either your teeth shift a little, or the muscles change, or whatever. And you have to adapt to that. It's kind of this constant chase of, well, what just happened? Why did this? All of a sudden, I got a buzz in my sound now, right? You know what I mean? Yep. And so, at least for everybody that I've talked to, I mean, maybe there are some people who are blessed to not have to deal with that, but I've noticed that my teeth have moved for sure over the last 10 years. And for me, it's actually been a better thing. I've actually helped me to play better. But I know a lot of guys that have struggled with that. Brian McDonald, we've been talking about his teeth, and he's had to shift his around, and, it can be a challenge. So you always have to be ready to adapt to something, right?
And being aware, I think, soon enough to know that something is changing, right? To then, do whatever you need to figure that out at the time, and not wait for, get 5 or 10 years, and then it's way into your head then. Yeah, for sure.
Well, let's chat briefly about your standard gear that you're using for most of these gigs, because I know you can play a wide range of stuff, but you've got kind of a specialized thing that you're doing out there. And tell us kind of what you're using and why you've, the characteristics of it, why you've chosen it, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, I can kind of do a quick evolution. I started, my first trumpet came from Frank Sinatra's lead trumpet player. He gave me a Martin committee, and that's how I started. And then I moved up, and then he gave me a Benge. And so I started on Benges, and I was a Benge guy.
And this was who?
That was Charlie Turner.
Okay, I knew that. I just wanted our listeners to know that.
Yeah, my father was with Frank Sinatra at the time, and Charlie and I got to know each other, and he heard that I could play trumpet and wanted to play trumpet. So he gifted me this horn, I wish I still had it. Like an idiot, I sold it not knowing what it was. But anyhow, that Vegas was just flooded with Clicchio trumpets because Dominic used to gamble. I heard the story. Chuck Finley told me the story that Dominic would come to town and gamble. He would make a bunch of horns, put them in his trunk. And if he was losing, he would call Chuck and say, hey, I got a bunch of horns cheap. Can you get them sold for me? And so all these Clicchios got sold in Vegas, right, while he was gambling. So I started playing Clicchio. I got John Harner's Clicchio from that Kenton 76 album. And, I mean, just incredible horns, man. I was really lucky. And so, I was playing a lot of big equipment with big holes, like 24 hole on a Bob Reeves mouthpiece, trying to be Conrad Gazzo and all that stuff. And eventually that, like I told you, the work kind of changed from that to wanting to do this and play high all night. And so I started slowly trying to get more efficient. And I worked my way through a Bobby shoe, and then I did a Calet Sima, which is a medium bore horn, fantastic trumpet, by the way. And I was kind of going through all these different things. And then I ended up getting exposed to Con 36B. And man, as soon as I played that horn, I knew, I was like, oh my God, this is what I've been looking for. Like, it was so efficient, and you got so much sound for so little amount of work compared to everything that I'd been playing, you know? So that was about 10 years ago. I bought one of them, and then I went on a journey, man, and I probably have purchased 60 or 70, maybe even more, to find the best one. And I found one that I really, really love. And so I play that. That horn for me works great for the kind of where I get asked to do a lot of, it's a lot of high register stuff all the time. And I have to be consistent on that. And when I started with Celine, I had John Duda made me a medium bore Calicchio, and I played that for a long time on there. But that horn just it didn't have enough sound. It was really great on a mic. It was real sizzly, but it just didn't have enough sound. So that's when I switched over to the Con after that horn. And it really allows me to play, high and loud all night, especially with my damage. I needed something that wouldn't crease in as I got tired. That horn seems to have the right resistance for me. And I can still, at the very end of the night, play whatever note is required and not feel like, oh God, I'm not going to get it, So that's been a real godsend. And so for that, like I was telling you, equipment does matter. But, I had to be able to I was doing it on other equipment too. It just was a lot more work,
Mm-hmm. So what era is that horn from? What year was it made?
That's either a 59 or a 60. It's right in between there. And that's the year I like. I like between like 60 and 61, the non-triggered first valve Cons. For me, those are the ones. I've had a lot of everything, and for me, those are the ones that seem to respond best.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can absolutely attest it works great for you, because I've seen Santa Fe many times, and as a matter of fact, I've come to town earlier if I'm supposed to be working that day, and I'll arrange my flights to get in a day early, or stay a day later, before I leave again, just to see the band.
Well, Danny, thanks so much for being here with us, man. This is some really insightful stuff you're bringing to the table about, getting on gigs, what it takes to be on a gig, ups and downs of playing, a little bit about equipment. We thank you so much for being here with us, and we'll post some of this stuff up there. But everybody, be sure, like I said, you got to get out to see Santa Fe and the Fat City Horns when you're in Vegas.
Monday at 7:30.
Every Monday. There you go, 7:30. It's great band. So, well, we'll look forward to seeing you, and we need to get Tommy back on here one of these days with you again to tell some more stories. I think that would be great as well.
Yep, that'll be awesome. Yeah, we're looking forward. We're going back with Gaga. He's on the band with me, so it's a lot of fun, man.
Awesome.
Oh, fantastic.
That's got to be a kick. So
it's great, man. It's great having him there.
That's the best of Las Vegas history right there. Tommy Pirello and you, and everything in between that you guys bring to the table. Wonderful.
Thanks, man.
Thanks again.
All right, guys. Thanks so much.